Thanks for stopping by Minnesota Black Robe Regiment. As always, make sure you are subscribed. And now here on the video on YouTube, you should be able to see a little banner down there in the corner that'll let you subscribe by clicking on it. So make sure you do that. And then make sure you're checking out the bell icon so you're getting notifications. Like, comment, and share. So as many of you know, the last couple of videos that I put out, or a couple of the videos I put out over the last week and a half, have been in relation to the Owatonna School District. And the first one was from a public school board meeting, and we recorded and we put out the public comments section, and then the follow-up video, which has kind of got some attention, has been directly about what appears to be some obfuscation, if not some misdirection, by the Owatonna School District and the Owatonna School Board, chiefly in the redacting of, or the not playing the totality of the school board meetings, the last several school board meetings that were held and recorded by the school district, which they should be, but they've not been put out in their totality. And in one case, a video took over a week to get out, and it over a course of several hours was shrunk down to 23 minutes and like 9 seconds. So we did talk about that, but I want to talk a little bit about the parent group that is forming there. And it's a very organic grassroots movement. And by grassroots, I'm not talking about the party that wants to legalize weed. Or is that the green root? I don't know. But this very grassroots movement in the Owatonna School District is emblematic and indicative of what's happening across the United States as a whole, and also what's happening in the state of Minnesota as a whole. We're starting to see parents' organizations spring up, rise up very organically in the individual school districts and saying, no, that's it. We demand accountability. Now, this district, the Owatonna School District, is kind of being spearheaded. This parents movement is being spearheaded by several people, and I'm very thankful for what they have done in engaging with the school board. And I have also encouraged them to continue to take it beyond the school board to their city councils and to their county commissions and on and on and on, because these people need to remember that they are elected servants, that they're not officials, they're not authorities, they're not superiors, they are servants. And by and large, they tend to forget that, especially right after they get elected. So I'm going to talk about a question that's been arising from this group, but this is something that we can all apply to any activity that we take at the local level when we're engaging with elected and appointed servants of the public, of we the people. And these public sector people, whether they be voted into the position that they have or they're appointed by the people that have been voted into position, need to learn how to answer questions. But what they actually learn overall is not how to answer questions. Instead, what they do is they learn how to obfuscate and how to misdirect. And I'm going to start off with a personal example. Several years ago, here in the town that I live in, I raised some frustration with, shall we say, the ability of the community to take care of snow removal. Now, this may sound petty to some of you. This may sound like a really small issue. But what was happening, especially in my situation, I live on a hill. I live in the middle of the hill. I don't live, and I don't have any way to get out of my property without having to travel uphill. In one situation, it was so bad, I actually missed a shift of work because I got stuck. I got stuck because of how they had failed to clear the road. I sound like I'm venting, and to some degree I am. And I had said something publicly on Facebook saying, look, this has got to stop. And word got around that I was upset. And so the response from a public servant was, well, if he expects his streets to be cleared, he's going to have to expect his taxes to go up. Excuse me. Yeah, you heard it. If he wants his streets cleaned better, then he's got to be willing to pay more in taxes. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is exactly why I tell you that the public servant class in the United States, elected and appointed, live in a completely different world than the rest of us. Could you imagine for a minute if I said, hey, you know what? I'm going to make sure that you don't get paid any taxes until you start doing a better job. What would happen? If I had the ability to avoid paying those taxes, they would come for me legally. But I don't have that option if I want better service from public servants. I don't get to withhold taxes until I get it. Now, I think we might be coming that way, really. So how does this relate? This isn't a new phenomenon by any stretch of the imagination. This has been going on in the United States for quite some time. But what we're starting to see, and especially as it relates to the Owatonna School District, is one of the school board members, her name's Nikki. She's a public servant, and I'm just going to flat out tell you that her name is Nikki. And this has been verified to me by several of the people in this grassroots movement. Nikki's response to the parents who are arguing against critical race theory being mandated, and critical theory in general, and comprehensive sex ed in general being mandated in the school district by the superintendent and by the school board, has been this. And this has been Nikki's response. If we don't do what the state tells us to do, they're going to cut our funding. Now, that sounds like a genuine concern, but it's not. And here's how this conversation should go. Public servant says, if we don't do what the state says in regards to X topic, they're going to take our money away. Your response, oh, that sounds very drastic. Can you explain to me what that means? Well, so what happens is they put this mandate out and they require that we implement this mandate, and we have to do what they say, because if we don't, then we lose funding for whatever. Your response, wow, so what you're saying is we will have less money to operate this particular entity because the state's going to cut money that you get from the state. Their response, yep, that's exactly what I mean. So what's the solution there? You should ask. Well, if that happens, then we're going to probably have to raise your taxes to accomplish whatever goals you want done. And here's where you need to go with that. So let me understand what you're saying. If you don't do what the state tells you to do, they're going to cut funding, and you're going to have to raise our taxes. But let me ask you this, public servant here at the local level. Where do you think the state gets that money? That state gets the money from the taxpayers. So really what you're saying is, if we don't do what the state tells us to do, they're going to take the tax money that you've already paid, and they're not going to let us have it back into the come back into the district for whatever entity we're dealing with. And then we're going to have to raise your taxes more anyway to make up for what we got cut by not doing what the state said. Do you see, my friends? Do you see, my fellow Americans, my fellow constitutionalists? Do you see, my fellow patriots, why this is so bad? And why, when they throw that out there, you have to be able to respond very quickly. You need to pin them down. Don't just take that. I don't care if it's Nikki on the Owatonna School Board. I don't care if it's a city council member of Owatonna. I don't care if it's city council of the town you live in, or it's a county commissioner. I don't care if it's local law enforcement. I don't care who it is. If their answer is, if we don't do this, they're going to cut our funding, you should be, that's my money that you're saying they're going to cut. And now you're going to tell me you're also going to come in. So I'm not going to get a tax break, and you're going to raise my taxes to go ahead and do this. And here's the other problem. Here's the other problem. In this case, what Nikki is saying to the people of the Owatonna School District is if the school board doesn't do what the state wants, we lose X amount of dollars. We lose X whatever. What she's saying is, even though you voted me into this position, I don't work for you. I work for the state. The state is my employer, and therefore I have to do what the state says. And here's the reality of that. That's patently false. Patently false. School board is not on the hook to do what the state tells them to do. The school board is there to represent the people of the Owatonna School District, or the Kingsland School District, or the Grand Meadow School District, or the Rochester School Districts, or the Preston School Districts, or whatever it might be. The school board exists to serve the people and do what the people want, not what the state wants. Sure, are there education requirements? Should your kids be able to read, write, and do arithmetic when they leave the school? Absolutely. And I don't have a problem with the state saying, okay, kids need to be able to meet these bare minimums. But when it comes to social agendas, if the state begins to mandate this Marxist leftist ideological position and tell the school district, tell the school board, you will do this or we will cut your funding, instead of getting scared and saying, we're not going to allow you to cut our funding, School District X, and in this case, Nikki and Owatonna School Board, we aren't going to allow you to do that. We're going to not implement this because the people of our school district do not want this Marxist, leftist, ideological garbage and gobbledygook foisted on their children or foisted on the people of the school district. So go ahead and cut whatever you want. We will work our way around it. And then it's on the people of the school district to say, okay, before you come and ask us for money, let's look at where we can tighten up our budgets. Where can we tighten up our budgets? What programs are we wasting money on? What staff are we wasting money on? I've heard tell that there's been trouble getting information from the school district in Owatonna by people. Maybe we need to start seeing people eliminated from their positions. Maybe the school board needs to be, refurbished, if you will, re-outfitted, if you would. If the school districts aren't going to represent the people and instead they're going to be lackeys of the state and do what the state says and then threaten the taxpayers, threaten we the people with increases in their local taxation while their state taxes are not being cut, while their funding is being cut to their school district, then the people need to rise up and demand accountability and take action. They need to take action. And that's what needs to happen. They don't get to do that anymore. They don't get to say, well, we have to do this because the state said so and the state's in charge. No, the state's not in charge. The state works for you. The state works for you. But we've forgotten that. And so have the people that are in elected offices and in appointed are elected servants positions and appointed servants positions. They've forgotten that. And it's high time that changes. High time that changes. We need to be done with it. It needs to be over. Make sure that you understand this. And I've said this to people before. You don't get any more local than your school board. You don't get any more powerful than your school board, quite frankly. Your school board can come to you for tax increases constantly. Constantly. And I've heard tell that the superintendent of the Owatonna School District has tried to eliminate the necessity by law for a referendum to have to be passed by the people so that if there's a certain percentage of space and all this other stuff that's part of the school district, then the school district the school board can just approve a new operating budget and new levies without having to get permission from the people. Talk about taxation without representation. That came from their superintendent. I just found that out after the last video I did. Now, I don't believe that he got any traction on that one. I think the Minnesota legislature shut him down. But that's what you're dealing with, and that is a lot of the school districts across the board. Take a look at the Rochester Independent School District. Their superintendent, and I believe he's now former superintendent, was defended by the school board amidst allegations of plagiarism. Not to be outdone, the Southern Baptist Convention just appointed a president who has also now been guilty of plagiarism. So the corruption in superintendents across school districts is not unheard of. And they're educated, for the most part, they're educated in the Marxist ideology. They think that way. They do think that way. And if you think for a minute that they represent you, you're crazy. Once again, if you have an elected or appointed servant that says, well, if we don't do this, we're going to lose funding from the state, say, great, let the state cut funding because we'll work on your budget next. We'll strip you down to such bare bones budget that you're going to be sweeping the floors, Mr. Superintendent, if it comes to that. Or you know what? Maybe we'll just get rid of the superintendent and we'll pay more janitors because they actually deserve that money. Mr. or Mrs. Superintendent, who's all on board with equity, maybe there should be pay parity between you and the guy who cleans the toilet. Or the gal who cleans up the lunchroom after some kid pukes all over the place. In fact, Mr. or Mrs. Superintendent, who's all for equity, maybe you should forego your salary so that somebody else can afford to pay their bills better. So we don't have to keep demanding tax increases on the people of the district. That's the way it should be. Until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.